You're listening to the Ordinary Joe's podcast with Joe D and Eric B. Ordinary Joe's podcast.
All right, another episode. The Ordinary Joe's podcast. Joe is wearing his aviator glasses today. Either that or he had a quick hit of something. I'm not going to say some fumes and his eyes are bloodshot red.
A little from column A, a little from column B.
Or we're talking about, a movie that was created in 1986. And 36 years later, they decided to make a sequel. We're talking about Top Gun Maverick. I can't wait.
36 years. Jeez.
I'm excited to talk. And I told Joe, dude, I apologize because I'm going to be long-winded about this because I got a lot to say about this movie. All positive, a little negative, but all positive. But let's go ahead and get this started, Joe. I am Eric B.
I'm Joe, and we are the Ordinary Joes.
Joe's a little on the hyper speed there.
Yes,
I'm trying to look at his eyes and I can't figure out his eyes. What's going on here? Like,
that was a cheat code. I didn't know.
Joe's like I am the Ordinary Joes.
Sorry, I'm just charged up. I feel like I'm flying a jet right now.
Slow down, man. Slow down. Like Instagram. You ever watch those little short videos on like Facebook and Instagram where they have these guys talking around and they're holding their cell phones like this and they're like, "Would you do?" Like they're going around and random girls, right? And then there's one where the girl goes like, he asked the girl like, Would you rather have the guy going really slow or super fast and hard?" And then there's this one girl's like, "I'm only 14. I don't know what you're talking about."
Oh, gee.
And they're like, "Never mind."
No, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, there's a few of them that's out there. That's kind of funny. But yes, today we're breaking down Top Gun Maverick. We're going to talk about the difference between 86 and the 2022 version. And for you guys who don't know, I'll just tell you right now, this movie was supposed to come out in 2021, but due to COVID, due to movie theaters not being open, Tom Cruise decided he didn't want to go the route like everyone else wanted to go to, or like, hey, just release it on, in home streaming. He's like, no, because you need to experience this in the movie theater. And I'm glad he waited because there was a big difference in the movie theater. And yesterday I watched some of it on my laptop, illegally, for you guys who are wondering how I watched it.
I was wondering.
Yeah, illegally. I watched it on the laptop and it's not the same. That's all I got to say. It's not the same. So,
okay.
Joe, go ahead and start us off. Break down the movie. Tell us your thoughts, your everything about it.
Yeah. Well, kind of piggybacking off of what you just said, I'm glad I watched it in the movie theater. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't really intending on it. Full disclosure, I wasn't like the biggest fan of the original one. I mean, I was 6 years old when it came out. I actually saw it in the movie theater and fell asleep. I think we spoke about this one time on one of the episodes. That's one of the blockbuster movies that I fell asleep in as a kid. But, I got to see it years later. And I mean, it's a good movie, right? And I'm talking about the original still. Good movie, had all the action and all the stuff you need, holds a special place in our hearts.
Yes.
Especially, I mean, someone like yourself who you're probably a teen when it came out. So, you probably kind of hold it a little closer to your heart, but I still like the movie, but really wasn't expecting much from this, sequel. In fact, originally I thought it was going to be a remake and I was like, I don't really care for remakes. And I'm like, but then I found out it was a sequel and I literally saw it in the theaters maybe 2 days before they were going to stop playing it, showing it at our local theater. So I was so happy I got to see it because this movie had no business being as good as it was. Like I was freaking floored.
Yeah.
Like Eric said, this original was 36 years ago. This takes place 36 years later. We see Maverick, played by Tom Cruise, who's still like in the military, still a captain, still a fuck up, but kind of on purpose because he doesn't want to move up because then he'll end up being behind a desk and he doesn't want that.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, there's this mission that has to be done, this uranium plant that has to be blown up, and they need the best pilots that can do this because it's a crazy maneuver and needs to be done. So they need Tom Cruise's character Maverick to come and teach these kids and be their hero teacher. But turns out he's the only one that can really do the maneuver really well. And so he has to lead the way. And so, Eric, what are your first thoughts as someone who was a little older than myself? How did you feel watching this sequel, this part 2 to Top Gun?
All right. So right away when the movie starts, man, we were treated with the whole deck scene, right? Where like back in 86, the same thing happened. We were on an aircraft carrier. They're showing us. And for you guys who's never been in the military or has no business to be in the military, in 86, there was a jump in people, men, women who wanted to be in the military. That's what this movie did. And I bet you now in 2022, there's going to be that same thing. But man, when I first heard this, I'm going to play snippets of it because, everybody knows this theme. So when I first heard that, I was like, oh my God, we're back in business, right? Because you're hearing that same thing. But then I'm going to fast forward this song just a little bit. And I'll talk about the movie because the soundtrack had a lot to do with it, right? So
absolutely.
When this part of the song came on, it's the same anthem, but they gave it a little twist. And here's the twist. So they played that little electric guitar riff 30 seconds into the movie, man. I swear to God, I was tearing up. I was fanboying out. I'm like, oh my God, I remember this from 1986, but it was more subtle. It wasn't this electric guitar version. And then, of course, what do they do right after that? They jump into the danger zone with Kenny Loggins. So definitely now you're thrown back into 1986. And the soundtrack is definitely a great part of the movie. And I did a podcast on my own podcast where I talked about movies that was complemented by great podcasts. By great soundtracks. And Top Gun, the original, was definitely one of them. So let's get that out of the way. But the movie itself, man, I was like you in the beginning. How are they going to tie in 1986 to 2022? How are they going to figure this out? What's going to happen to Meg Ryan? Because not Meg Ryan, his girlfriend.
Yeah, the other one.
Because she's 100 years old, right? Right. She was already older. She looked older then. So she's like, how is she going to? Kelly McGillis, that's her name. Kelly McGillis. So how are they going to bring her back? So they didn't bring her back, which I'm glad they didn't. And what they did was they brought back a character by the name of Penny, who was Maverick's love interest. So if you guys caught the beginning of Top Gun, the original, for you guys who don't know who Penny Benjamin was, when him and Goose was getting busted because of that little flyby scene right before they go into Top Gun, the lieutenant there says, and one admiral's daughter. You were messing around with one admiral's daughter, and then Goose leans over and goes like, you were messing around with Penny Benjamin? So they tied in Penny Benjamin in this movie. So, which I totally, totally love. And just everything about this movie, the diversity about this movie, right? I mean, like in Top Gun, the first one, you only had one African-American guy, and he was the wingman. He wasn't even the pilot. He was the wingman. I think his name was Hollywood, right? Was it Hollywood?
I think it was Hollywood. I'm not sure. I have to go back and watch the first one, actually.
No, wait, I'm looking at that. His name was Sundown. His name was Sundown. So I'm looking at their call signs.
Oh, that's right. Here. Yeah, I mean, how could I forget? That was like the overtly racist nickname for the black guy. How could we forget that? And that's one thing I'll talk about too in a minute. But yeah, they had one African-American person, and he wasn't even a pilot. In this one, you had a Hispanic guy. You had a female. You had not only a female, but a Hispanic female. You have an African-American pilot. And then one thing that kind of confused me was Bob. Yeah.
Robert Bob Floyd. From my understanding, and for you guys who were in the military or know anyone in the military, or know anyone that flies, period, I thought to be a pilot, you had to have 20/20 vision. But in hindsight, he wasn't really a pilot because he was just
he was a spotter, but I would think that'd be more important as a spotter to have 20/20 vision. Because
you have to see when the missiles or the guns are coming, right? I don't know. When I wanted to be a pilot, the only thing that stopped me from back then when I was like 12 years old and I said I want to be a pilot, and they're like, no, you can't because you wear glasses, so you can't be a pilot. So I was like, all right, well, that's kind of, thing for me not being a pilot.
Yeah.
But I love the diversity in this movie. I love what it did. And not only just the special effects. I mean, I don't even know if you want to say those special effects because everything was practical effects. Everything was really happening. And man.
I mean, for me, that what you just touched on was probably one of my favorite things about it is the fact that there was little to no CGI. This was actual, pilots flying. And man, shout out to Tom Cruise, man. This guy, we've spoken about his movies before. We've spoken about him before, but I've become a bigger fan after this movie because we know that he loves to do his stunts. We know he's always really involved. He's actually one of the producers of this movie, along with Jerry Bruckheimer. We forgot to mention that. Directed by Joe Kosinski. Music by Hans Zimmer. No, this isn't 1997. This is, but they got, the best of the best on this film. But back to what I was saying, Tom Cruise, you don't get these shots in this movie without Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
No other lead actor or actress is going to be performing their own stunts, flying planes. I mean, this guy, he set up a 3-month school, like boot camp for the cast to prepare them to be able to not only be in a plane, but act while they're in the plane.
Yeah.
And they also had to be cameramen also because they had to, once they were up in the air, that's it. The director can't really tell them what to do. They have to kind of just do what they do. And so they became camera people as well. So they went through this rigorous training and putting their body through, G forces and puking and all this crazy stuff just to get these amazing shots. And they also worked together with the military, which was cool too.
Yeah. And
they kind of coordinated how they could possibly film it, how they could rig the jets with cameras, which I think they each had 6 cameras on them. Like, I don't know. It was visually, it's just absolutely amazing. Nothing like it.
This movie definitely needs to win some kind of an award. And just exactly what you said, just the visual effects and the looks on their faces when they were like hitting the G's that's something you can't do with CGI because you have to be there. And that's what Tom Cruise said in an interview was he wanted to be more involved in this movie because even though Top Gun 86 made a lot of money and it was good, he wanted this to be better. He wanted this to exceed. So he had more control on what you just said. He had more control on the filming and how he wanted to look like, the angles. And a lot of the shots that we see in the final cut were shots that weren't even supposed to make it in the film because they were like, you had the pilots with that and like, oh shit, look, like, oh damn. But Tom Cruise said that looks so authentic that's what he wanted in the shot. And there was this one shot in the end of the movie where they hit that target that they were hitting, right? That little uranium area. And then him and that female, what was her name was it Phoenix? Yeah, it was Phoenix. They go up and they hit that G, right? They said, hey, we're going to hit about 10 Gs. And just that look and that pushback on his face and you can see the
almost
Gs.
Passing out.
Yeah, that right there you cannot get on a CGI. You probably could. There's good CGI out there, but this one was so authentic and it looks so real that this movie right here, again, here I am in my 50s or in my 50, sat and said, do I want to be a pilot? No, just because it was just that, it was that motivating kind of movie where it's like, oh yes, damn it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. I know what you mean. Especially the one scene where, none of the students were able to perform the maneuver in training and their time got cut short. And they're like, they kicked Tom Cruise out. Maverick.
Yeah.
And they're like, listen, you know what? We're just going to do it this way. We're going to modify the time. And they're like, they already know, wait, if we do that, it's going to be more dangerous for us. And what does Maverick do? He takes one of the planes and he decides to do the maneuver himself to prove that it can be done. And this scene
in that time frame that they wanted.
In that time frame, it was like 3 minutes or less, something like that.
Yeah.
And he's flying and maneuvering in this canal through mountains, and you just see him grunting and turning with the jet. And he's like, and you, there's a particular type of breathing they use for like the G forces so they don't pass out. And it's real. You're watching, you know, when you're watching it, I'm not watching CGI. I'm not watching computer effects. I'm watching this guy do this. And it's just, to me, it seems like it's faster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Then we've seen all these movies where they show dogfights and stuff, but to actually be sitting in the cockpit, it's amazing how just these pilots can make these like split-second decisions in the air while they're flying. Like it's amazing.
You know, it's funny, that scene that you're talking about when, you know, he's trying to prove that it can be done. I'm glad they lowered the music volume in that scene, because hearing him when he banks left, and then and then, you know, pulling up on the G's and he's like, that to me was definitely authentic. And, you know, it's like, you can't have that reaction. It's like, okay, Tom, we want you to grunt when you turn right. And, you know, it's like, ooh, you know, it's like, no, Tom, we need a little bit more into it. We need that. You know, this one was authentic. Like, as soon as he banked left, he's like, and you can hear it in his voice. So it's like, with him having to do what he did in this movie, man, it's like, this is where I want Top Gun to just end. You know, it's like, end it, because you ended it. You didn't have to prove 86 anymore, but you did. You proved it with Maverick, Top Gun Maverick, and you don't have to do it. You don't have to do anything anymore, because anything else after this is kind of like the whole, how I tell you about Back to the Future never should be redone. This is how Top Gun never should be redone or done again. It's done. It's over.
No, I agree. I mean, Tom Cruise, he said he wanted to wait before he did the sequel till you know, special effects and technology caught up to where they can do pretty much the movie he would have wanted to do back then.
Yeah.
And cinematically, there's no way you top this movie.
No way.
I think this is one of the best movies I've seen in a long time. And right now it's still fresh, but I think it's going to be up there on some of my all-time favorite movies. And there's no topping it. It was perfect. It's as perfect as you can possibly get story-wise. Like you said, it wasn't like cheesy. They just didn't throw him in there for the sake of throwing him in there. Him taking over made sense. There was a plan to it. Like his love interest, right? The way they kind of brought that Easter egg back in, which, by the way, I love Jennifer Connelly. Yeah. Huge crush on her when I was a kid because of Labyrinth. Years later, got to meet her.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. And I was lucky enough to meet her years later. She was one of my customers when I worked for FedEx, and she is beyond nice. Like, not one of those celebrities that'll let you down when you meet them in person. Super cool person. But yeah, just everything was done really well and made sense. And I hope, I don't think Tom Cruise, I think he knows what they've done, and I don't think they'll dip back in and try to stretch it out for a money grab. He doesn't need it. He just wanted to do, you know, an amazing movie, and for it to be what they call a legacy sequel, because it'd been over 25 years before they did the sequel, and for the sequel to be, you know, just as good, if not better, in my opinion, is better.
Way better. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. That was a great feat. I can't wait to watch it again, to be honest with you. Talking about it now, you might have to show me how to watch it on my laptop.
I will. It's very easy if you know how to download these little apps or go on these little websites. But you know, my concern was in this movie, and this was going into this movie, was how are they going to tie in these 1986 characters that we knew were coming back? You know, Val Kilmer, you know, played a little role in here. We didn't see anybody else other than Val Kilmer, because everybody else either passed away or is no longer in, you know, didn't want to do the movie. How are they going to tie in Goose's son, who was played by Miles Teller? And, you know, call sign Rooster, which to me was perfect because his dad was Goose and he was Rooster. How are they going to tie this in? To me, so I wanted to see how they were going to tie this in, and the writers and the directors did a perfect job of tying everything in. You know, like from the beginning when they said you're still a captain because you don't want to do anything else than be lieutenant, and we saw in Maverick's face was he wasn't ready to hang it up. He didn't want to. He didn't want to give up flying. And in the opening scene, he's flying this test plane where the only way it can work is if the military has to go over 9 Gs, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Tom Cruise being the way, or Maverick being the way Maverick is, he says we can go to 10.
Yeah.
And then you have that one guy who was like, oh, shit.
Yeah. It's like, damn it. Here we go.
Damn it. Yeah. But so, yeah, I mean, the writing in this movie was spot on, from tying in loose ends, and them giving us Val Kilmer was kind of like that, like, oh, you know, because in the movie in the beginning, if you guys, shame on you if never watched 86, Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer, they didn't really get along in the 86 film. And we just got them at the end of the movie where they were both pointing at each other as, you could be my wingman. No, you can be my wingman. That's all we got. We've never seen anything after that. And for them to tie this in and bring this back to us, and they became really close friends. And if it wasn't for Iceman, Tom Cruise would have been out of the military.
Yeah.
And as soon as he died, what does John Hamm's Cyclone, or John Clan's Cyclone's character do? It's like, there's no more, Iceman's not here to save your life. You're out.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
No, totally agree. The writing was amazing. And, you know, earlier when you said that as soon as you heard that music, you know, you got choked up, and that was the scene with Val Kilmer. That's what it was for me. Cause I was really curious, you know, how are they going to work him into this movie? You know, for those of you who don't know, Val Kilmer, unfortunately, is suffering from a form of cancer. I believe I don't know, is it throat cancer or mouth cancer or something
throat
like that?
Cancer.
And he, you know, he can't really speaks with a voice box. So I was really curious as to how they were going to pull it off. And the writing, one of the ways they did that was, you know, you don't see him at first. They only communicate via text. And we know that he's the reason why Maverick was brought over to Top Gun. You know, we know he saved him, like Eric said. Like, I thought that was really cool to see how, you know, 30 some odd years later, how close they've become. And then the way they just, I think they treated it with a lot of respect. You know, they said, you know, we're not going to try to, you know, come up with some cockamamie idea of as to why he's the way he is. No, they gave Iceman the, you know, spoiler alert, you know, his character also had cancer. So now it made sense as to why he can't really speak, why he speaks through a computer. And that for me was like, that was really emotional, because I'm a big Val Kilmer fan as it is. So to know that he's actually, you know, fighting this stuff and going through that made it that much more real. And it also was an amazing scene, amazing acting by Tom Cruise. I was really surprised. And it's the part where Iceman tells him, you have to walk away.
Yeah.
And there's, you see Tom Cruise's face. And to me, he wasn't acting at that point, because it's kind of, to me, it correlates with his career in acting. It's like, look, you're in your 50s. You don't need to be doing all these stunts. You don't need to be pushing the limit. And he's just like, I can't. And that's what he says in the movie. Like, I can't. And you see his face when he reads it. It's just, he's deflated for a second, and you see just all this emotion. And man, I looked over at my wife, and her face is just soaking wet. And I'm just like, man, this is not supposed to be this good. I'm not supposed to be tearing up at Top Gun, you know, part 2 essentially. But it was, that's how great this movie was. Like, it just, the acting, the cinematography, the music. Tom
Cruise is 60, by the way. He's 60 years old. Probably like 58, 57 when he shot this movie. But yeah, he's 60 years old. And for a man to be 60 and still flying G's and doing his own stunt, I mean, you know, hell, I prolonged this podcast 30 minutes because I didn't want to get out of bed. Texting Joe, hey, dude, give me 30 minutes, man. I'm still trying to sleep. But for him, I was dozing off. And for him to be at 60 years old and doing his own stunts, you know, it's funny. I went back and I listened to our podcast. For you guys who follows us, we did a podcast about movies that need sequels. So I went back there and I said, hey, let me see if we actually talked about Top Gun. We did talk about Top Gun. Nice. And we talked about how are they going to do it. We knew it was in the works when we did the podcast, but we were like, how are they going to do it? You know, Val Kilmer was 100 years old. You know, we were joking around. Val Kilmer was 100 years old. What's the plot going to be? So if you go back and listen to that and listen to what our thoughts were, and then going to listen to this, it's kind of like, wow, we actually, I don't want to say we read the future, but we were kind of a little bit on point when we were saying, how are they going to bring it back and how are they going to tie this in? What are they going to do?
Nice.
Who are they going to fight? You know, that to me was kind of cool. How did you like John Hamm's character, man? I loved his character as an asshole character.
John Hamm.
He was Cyclone. He was the guy that just did not like Maverick at all.
You know, I really enjoyed it. At first I thought, you know, it was a little too much, but it wasn't. It was borderline. It was kind of, you know, borderline silly, but not silly, but you know what I mean, where it's like, all right, this is a little ridiculous, but it wasn't. It was good. I like that. I like the pressure that he put on Maverick. I like Maverick having that you know, that adversary as because you know, he's naturally cocky. That's Maverick. That's what he is. He's an ace. He's, you know, and so to have someone there constantly trying to knock him down and stop him from doing this, it was needed and it was done well. Yeah. Now, if there was one thing that I wasn't crazy about, when you spoke earlier about like the diversity, like I love that. I love the different characters they had in the school. I love that kind of back and forth they had, because it was sort of like how Maverick and Iceman back in the day had their two crews going at it. I wish though that maybe they could have, I don't know how they could have, but maybe develop those characters a little more, because I really wasn't too invested in them. You know what I mean? I was more kind of the mission they were doing, everything that Maverick was going through, and knowing that he was going to have to, you know, take control. I did love Miles Teller playing Rooster, and I love that connection, obviously, because you think of Goose, and you know, that's another scene where I got choked up, where, you know, we always know where the quote where Maverick's like, "Talk to me, Goose." Yeah. You know, and there's a part where Rooster's
run with me, Goose. Run with me, Goose.
Yes. Yeah. And then he's, you know, Rooster's kind of like, he's doubting himself and he's scared, and then going through the mission, and he kind of whispers and he's like, "Talk to me, Dad." Like that one was like, oh man, that's awesome. So for him, you know, I definitely had, you know, I was invested in him, but the other characters not so much. And I mean, we're nitpicking here now. It's not like the biggest thing. Like,
I agree with you. Yeah.
But that would be the one negative, if I had to say there was one in this movie, where I didn't care too much about those characters.
Well, since we're talking negative, the one negative that I can give back to this movie, give my opinion to this movie, is I don't know why Maverick was so hesitant on just telling Rooster the truth. You know, it's like, look, I set you back in the academy because I promised your mom before she passed away. I mean, I think that would have been like, because, you know, Rooster was being raised by his mom, because, you know, Goose is gone. So I'm pretty sure off camera, they had a really strong connection when it came to his upbringing. Right. So if Tom Cruise or Maverick's character, Maverick would have just said, look, this is what I promised your mom before she passed away, and she didn't really want to see you fly because of what happened to your dad. I think the connection with Rooster and Maverick would have been a little bit more. It would have been a lot sooner, I guess, if they did say that. There was a couple of times in the movie where I thought he was just going to say that, like when he was sitting in the room by himself, and then Maverick walks in, and then, you know, Rooster's like, "Why'd you hold me back in the academy? Why'd you do that?" When that came up, I thought Maverick was just going to flat out say, "Hey, I promised your mom." I think as a person, if I heard that and someone told me, "I promised your mom, I'm not going to have you fly because of what happened to your dad," I think as a person, I would have been like, "Wow, you spoke to my mom." You know, I would have been like that. But I think the writers didn't want to go that direction. I think it would have been too easy if they did go that direction. So that's probably why they didn't go that direction. But
I think they wanted a little bit of that kind of tension between the two of them, you know, for a while, because he does at the end, when he's talking to Penny, he tells her, like, you know, he was already mad at me. He didn't want him to be mad at his mother as well. Because that was all she had left. So I understood that, but it would have made more, you know, it would have made sense. It would have made it a lot easier if he would have just been upfront and said, "Look, you know, I was looking out for you." You know, I didn't. And plus, you know, he still carries the guilt of his dad. You know, him. You know, he feels responsible for his dad's death. And so, but overall, man, I think it was really written well, because it's kind of like when you look at the first movie, like you just recently watched it, right?
Yeah.
And even if they would have made this movie, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, how would it have been written? Like, it makes sense now because it's so long ago, after, and we see how they wrote it in. But I feel like if they would have made a sequel sooner, I don't know that the story would have been as good. And obviously the visuals wouldn't have been as good.
Yeah.
It's just my opinion.
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, he waited at the right time, the right moment. And we know Tom Cruise, the way he thinks, he wants it done a certain way. Even if you watch the Mission Impossible he does, the stunt choreographic that he does there, he wants it done a certain way. He wants the visual effects to look a certain way. And for him to just keep pushing this back 36 years to say, wait, this is what I want and this is how I want it. And I love, again, in this movie, I love how we don't even know who the bad guys are. We don't even know if it's like, an Asian country or a European country. It's just there's a nation out there with a bunker of uranium, and we just need to blow it up. The ships had no decals, didn't have any flags on there. Yeah. I love that. I love that. And, of course, you have, North Korea, like, was that us? You have Russia's like, was that us? Like, I don't know. Yeah. Do you have uranium, somewhere in the mountain? Exactly. It's like, but I love that. I love the whole thing. And what I love was the little subtle Easter eggs, like Penny Benjamin coming back and them in the bar singing Great Balls of Fire.
Great Balls of Fire.
And then Rooster leading it, because in the original, Goose was the one singing it. And it brings back this little flashback. And that's what I loved about it was when that was playing, Tom Cruise starts thinking, oh, shit. And then he remembers, Rooster being on top of the piano when the dad was playing it. So that's one thing. Another thing I loved about this movie is they didn't kill it with so many flashbacks. You have movies that they'll kill it with so many flashbacks, and it's kind of one of those, well, you should have watched the movie. And that's the reason why they're giving us flashbacks, is because you didn't watch the movie. This one had maybe one or two, which was just subtle flashbacks, not even a lot of flashbacks. And I loved how they did that. They just brought us up to speed. And one thing I'm really, really happy for is they didn't sing You Lost That Love and Feeling. I'm glad they didn't sing that.
That one would have been annoying.
No,
it was really clever how they did that. Like you said, it wasn't a lot of flashbacks, but they did things like, show you pictures of Goose and Maverick from back in the days pinned up on his wall and things like that remind you. And in fact, it's kind of weird to me. You feel the loss of Goose more in this movie than you did in the first one.
Yeah, I did. I did.
Because it's so nostalgic, and you think about the movie, and then you kind of remember what happened, and this just whole buildup. And then Miles Teller looks exactly like Goose, and pardon me, I don't know the actor's name, but looked exactly like him. It was a great casting job.
Anthony Edwards was his real name.
Anthony Edwards looks just like Anthony Edwards.
Yeah.
And so you really, like, man, you feel that pain of like, damn it, and oh man, I got chills so many times in this movie. Again, like I said, I'm amazed at Top Gun Part 2 has me like tearing.
And it's funny because I got to bring this up to you, Joe. I'm not dogging you or anything, but when I told Joe I'm going to go watch Top Gun Maverick, and Joe came up, and Joe was like, I'm going to pass on that movie. Because, Joe, and I get it. Joe was 6 years old when the original came out. And there was a lot of scenes with the guys being topless. It was a shower scene that, if they had to redo 86, that's probably one of the scenes I would have got rid of. We didn't need to see them in towels and, walking around after the shower or before the shower. But it made the movie what it was or what it is. That's why they had to put that scene. And then the volleyball scene in the original 86, another shirtless scene where every girl's like, oh, But in this one, they did a little football scene, which I was like, I knew they were going to do it. But it's like, okay, what are you going to do? Because, the volleyball scene's a little killjoy. So they did a little, beach football, which I was totally glad they did, and happy they did that. And you still had the guys topless, but it was pretty cool.
Well, Eric's being really nice. So years back, there was a video that popped up on YouTube, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but the video is called "Top Gun is Gay," and I watched the video, and it's like a montage of all these like ambiguously gay scenes that you didn't probably pay attention to as a kid or even picked up on. One in particular is where Tom Cruise is in his tighty whities, leaned over a sink, and the freaking captain's standing behind him talking to him. You're like, wait a minute, how, in what situation would this happen? So I think years later watching that, it kind of poked so much fun at the original that I almost didn't take it serious anymore.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, when I hear the second one coming out, I'm just like, all right, yeah, I'll get to it. But there was just too many people who saw the movie before me, Eric, one of them, people whose opinions I trust, telling me like, no, this movie's good, you got to go see it. And I was like, all right, screw it, I'll go watch it. And man, I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
And you know, even if it, you know, I don't know if it might be on its way out in the movie theater soon. So, you know, if you have a chance, go see it. But even if you don't, I mean, see it when it comes out on you know, cable or whatever it does, because it's definitely worth it.
You know what's gonna suck is I have every streaming platform you can think of, right? We have everything from Disney Plus to HBO Max to Hulu, all that. This is most likely going to come out on Paramount Plus, which I don't have. That's one of the streaming that I don't have because it's a Paramount movie. So I don't know if HBO is going to be like, hey, let's, you know, we'll pay you the rights to release it on our platform. I'm hoping they do. Yeah. But, you know, we'll see because, you know, I want to watch it again. And, you know, watching it illegally, you know, the person who did the video, did a very good job of being really steady and hiding that one little head in the corner of the screen because you have somebody's head, the shadow, like who just kept bobbing around like this. Yeah. Like, dude, sit still. But I just wanted to watch it because, you know, I watched it when it first came out. And so I wanted to remember some of the scenes so that way we can talk fresh about it. But man, just watching it then, I'm like just watching it like this, just like, don't do it. Don't. Yeah. You know, you get back into it and God, you know, I kind of want to watch it in 4D now just to see if they still have it in 4D, you know?
Oh, I didn't even know they had it in 4D.
Yeah, well, you know, my son watched Bullet Train in 4D and he said that was an awesome experience and said, I wonder what it would have been like if you guys watched Top Gun in 4D. So I'm like, geez.
Dude, I really wish I didn't even watch it in IMAX, to be honest. I watched it in a regular theater and it was like ridiculous.
I watched it in regular theater too. And it was, you know, to me, it's just as long as the sound is good and there's nobody around me talking, which that night was terrible. Let me just explain for you guys. We watched a 9:00 show at Tanforan, and everybody who came that night were my age or a little bit older than me because, you know, it's a nostalgia type movie. We want to see what the movie's about. And we had, you know, I have a problem with people talking in the movie theaters. That's why I hate going to the movie theaters. That's why, you know, it's like if I know I'm going to go watch an opening MCU movie, I know there's going to be a lot of people talking. So I kind of just like zone that out. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to listen to you. I think we watched Top Gun 2 weeks after the release. Like we didn't watch it right at the release. We watched it 2 weeks after. We watched the 9:00 show, which there wasn't a lot of people there. It's reserved seating in Tanforan. And just so happens 10 seats in the back row where people were a little bit older than me, you know, and they were drunk out of their fucking minds.
Oh, man.
And the whole fucking time it's like, oh, Tom, oh my God. I'm like,
that's annoying.
And the thing was, they weren't even kids. They were adults.
Yeah.
That's what made it even more annoying. And again, they were like older than me. And then like finally someone said, shut the fuck up. And they're like, oh, someone's the man today. Then the lady was like, hey, look, they're here to watch a movie. Let's all be quiet. So I'm like, thank you. But that was like already 3 minutes into the movie. So it's like, you know, that's the only thing I didn't like about that particular movie. But, you know, that's just me nitpicking.
Yeah. I mean, we lucked out because, like I said, we waited so long to see it. But surprisingly, because we do the theaters with the luxury lounges. Yeah. And so we do, you know, you pick your seat ahead of time. It's reserved seating. And when we picked the seats, there was only one other person besides us. So we were like, oh, great, we're gonna have the theater to ourselves. We were like dead center, you know, perfect. Yeah. And as we're walking in, we see this lady walking in front of us. We're like, oh, that's her, that's the one. But we walked in there and no, it was actually pretty full. Like,
wow,
even down to the last, day, there was like every seat eventually was taken up. But thankfully, everyone that was in the theater was quiet, and
nice.
We actually had a really pleasant experience. Like, I remember looking over to my wife, it's like, man, I really like the movies, because the day before, just to get off topic real quick, this last weekend was a great weekend for me for movies, because I saw Top Gun and I saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, which, by the way, is probably the second best movie I've seen all year round, next to Top Gun. I mean, these two movies are absolutely ridiculous, but we'll maybe talk about that.
I'm going to watch that movie. I want to do a review with Joe on that movie. So I'm going to find a way. Please. I got this illegal site. Don't tell nobody, but I'm going to watch it. Just because I couldn't find it. When you told me you were going to watch it, I was like, okay, let's see if we can watch this. I couldn't find it. In the theater that we want to watch. We're a Cinemax members, so it's like I get a discount when I buy tickets. So I was like, okay, I can't find it any Cinemax, and the closest Cinemax was like San Pablo that was showing the movie, but it was like at 9:00 at night, and I'm like, I'm not going to go to San Pablo at 9:00 at night. So
wait, is that Cinemax or Cinemark?
Cinemark. I'm sorry, Cinemark.
Cinemark. Okay, yeah. I think the one in Daly City is Cinemark.
The one by the BART station. Yep.
That's where we go. Yeah. And they had, that was where we watched it. I don't know if it's still there, but
I'll double check. I'll double check. But yeah, I definitely want to watch it. I definitely want to review that movie, because from what you said, without giving spoilers, it was kind of like an MCU. What did you say? MCU?
I said MCU. I said Multiverse of Madness, Matrix, and Kung Fu Hustle, kind of all balled into one. And those are all like some of my favorite movies. Kung Fu Hustle, that's a sleeper, I think. That's a classic for me.
Yeah, that's already something that I definitely want to watch. But yeah, definitely gonna check it out. I definitely want to watch it, and then when I do watch it, we'll go do a review about it. But back to the movie, man. I mean, there was just a lot of, me and Joe did this. We told each other in the a couple days ago that we were going to do our own call signs, right? Because everybody had call signs. And before we get into what our call signs are, I love the call signs in this one versus the ones in the original. And the only reason why I say that is someone pointed out to me, do you notice the asshole in the 86 was Val Kilmer, and his name was Iceman,
right? Straight
asshole. And the asshole in this one was Hangman.
Yeah.
So it's like they had to add the word man at the end to be the asshole in the movie. And I was like, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, but I love, and someone else pointed out to me, it's like, you noticed in this one, Jester and Viper were the two teacher pilots that was always up there. And they were like always talking shit and doing this. And this movie, none of the guys who were the captains or the lieutenants, whatever, decided they didn't want to fly. They were just on the ground, so they're talking all this shit on the ground, but couldn't really do it. So that's what made it a good movie. But I love the call signs, and the funny scene in the movie when they were all going around like, "Hey, what's your call sign? What's your call sign?" And then they get to Bob. "What's your call sign?" "Bob." No. "What's your call sign?" "Bob." I was like, they didn't give this poor guy a call sign. His name is, because Joe told me, your call sign has to be given to you. I didn't know that. I thought you can pick your own call sign. But I guess this poor guy was just the Bob that they didn't give him a call sign. So his name was just
he was just
Bob.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. That was something that I looked up because we spoke about giving ourselves call signs. Just out of curiosity, I was Googling call signs, and I came up upon this thing that was saying that generally, they're given to you, and it's usually it could be something like a physical trait or something you've done in battle, or anything kind of along those lines.
Wow.
But yeah, it's usually given to you by someone else. So I was like, well, if that's the case, then I'm gonna go on a call sign generator and see if I can find something that fits. And surprisingly, I felt like the first one nailed it. So actually, I'll go ahead. So my call sign is Smokey, And anybody who knows me, and it's funny that Eric said earlier about what he said about me wearing the shades. I mean, it fit. I was like, oh, perfect. It was kind of spooky how spot on it was. But yeah,
smoking. So, wow. Yeah, and this generator doesn't even ask questions. It just asks you what your name is and what, I don't probably ask for your email address. But mine was kind of weird because, I put my name, Eric, and I didn't put my full last name. I just put Eric B, right, as my last name. And it came out as Buzzard. And I sat there for a minute and I said, you know what? I'm going to redo this because I kind of don't like Buzzard. But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, you know what? If someone gave me the name Buzzard, I can't say, no, give me another one. I have to stick with what they give me.
Right.
And I was like, all right, I guess I can be. But then I looked up what a buzzard is. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of a small bird. Yeah. But then if I was sitting there and I thought about that scene when they were talking about giving each other, the call signs and what they are, I said, that kind of sounds badass. It's like, I'm Buzzard.
Yeah.
But I can see
I actually do like the name.
But I can actually hear people like, Buzzard? What the fuck's a buzzard? Like, I don't know, man. Yeah. It's some type of bird.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right, about nicknames. It's usually the ones that stick are the ones that were given to you that you wouldn't have picked for yourself. Me at work, I was the commissioner of our fantasy football league, and somehow Commish got stuck with me. So there's a few guys at work who call me Commish. It's like one of those things that's just like it just happens. I have other nicknames as a kid that I won't say on here that I hated that my family gave me. So, I think Buzzard is pretty cool.
Family nicknames. I was given a name back in middle school, and it's funny because this ended up being my name for like the 3 years that I was in middle school. I was in 6th grade, and there was this big bully that just kept bothering everybody. And I never said anything to him, but one day he decides to bother me, and he says something to me. Then everybody turns around, and he's just laid out on the ground. And I'm standing over him, walking over him, and I'm saying like, "Don't ever talk shit to me like that again." And then I went to a school full of African American kids, and these kids were like, "Oh shit, little E." So one guy was like, "Oh man, that fool is, that N is, he's like a little kilo, man. He comes in a small package, but he's like big and tough." And the next day, well, after I got suspended, of course, because I hit this kid, right? You get suspended for a couple of days. I come back to school. They're like, "What's up, Kilo?" I'm like,
nice.
Kilo. Like, what?
I think you're like drug dealer.
Like, what the dude? That's the first thing people, like I had a teacher, a Spanish teacher, Mr. Ortiz. I still remember his name. He's like, why do they call you Kilo? Because, in Colombia, kilo means, I go, kilo is a size. And, it's a small size. So that's why they gave me the name Kilo, because I'm a small size, but I come in a big package. And they're like, oh, okay. But of course you had that one guy who's not, who's gay. And he's like, "What kind of package do you have, Kilo?"
Yeah.
Why do they call? I was like, "Dude, don't." It's like, "Hey, go ask LeBron." LeBron's the one that gave me this nickname. This guy was named LeBron.
Yeah.
Not LeBron with a B, but LeBron with
LeBron.
a V. Yeah. He's the one that gave me the name Kilo, and I'm like, "Why'd you call me Kilo?"
LeBron Lames.
LeBron. Actually, it's funny because he was black, but his last name was Rodriguez, and
it's probably like Panamanian or Dominican
he was just like, no. Like, no. Like, I have no Hispanic whatsoever. I was like, dude, then your dad had to be like half
somebody's lying to him.
Yeah. Like,
he's in denial.
That guy that's raising you is not your real dad, man.
It's like it was Mike Tirico who says he's just Italian.
No, yeah.
But anyway. Oh, I forgot to mention a highlight of this movie. Someone I was happy to see, Ed Harris. Man, one of my favorite actors ever since the Truman Show. Yeah. He plays was he like a general or something? He was basically the one that was ready to kick Tom Cruise out of the military in the beginning.
He was done. Let me go look him up. Go ahead.
But there's a great scene in the beginning. Eric had mentioned it earlier when they were talking about this plane, this prototype that in order for them to keep the program open, this plane had to go over 10 Gs, and Ed Harris's character was on his way already to shut down the program before they even get to try for a last time. So Maverick steals the plane and says, "Well, he's not here yet, so let's just go ahead and do the test now." Just as Ed Harris's character is pulling up. Now there's this scene where, you know, the jet's taken off and Ed Harris is standing there and just flies directly over him. And you see all the wind and all this stuff, and it blows the roof off of the building. That was one take. Yeah. That was not intentional. The power of that jet taking off literally ruined the building. There was like one shot, one take, but it looks absolutely amazing, and they kept it. And that's just a lot of scenes, a lot of shots in this movie were like that, where you know, think of how crazy it was to make this movie, where they send these jets up with these cameras and these actors, and they do all this stuff. And then they don't know until they're done, and it comes back down, and like, oh shit, the lighting's off here, or this is off. And then they have to do it again. I don't know if they do it the same day, if they got to wait or what. So I can't even imagine the budget behind this movie. And at a time where, especially after the pandemic, where a lot of people are going smaller budget, direct to Netflix, direct to streaming. And you can see, like, I honestly, besides, you know, like Marvel movies, which are mostly CGI, I was not expecting to see this kind of old school, big budget movie. And I love the fact that they decided to wait till people were able to be back in the movie theaters, because this movie had to be experienced that way. Like, I mean, you know, it's great to watch, like you said, on TV or at home and all that, but when you sit there and you just, it's the sound almost makes you feel like you're in the jet, like you're feeling these G's, like the rumbling and the air from the speakers, and just how it looks like. A lot of thought, time, and effort went into this, and if this movie doesn't win best cinematography, then the Academy is bullshit, because we're going to get a movie where, you know, it's going to be a bunch of people dancing in a ballroom that has lovely gowns flowing and the music's playing. That's the kind of movie that's going to get best cinematography. But a movie that actually did what it was supposed to do, make us feel, because, you know, when we watch a movie, that's the first thing we think of is like, what if I was there? You know, I always do that in every movie. I put myself in that situation, or I put myself alongside Captain America, you know, him fighting a battle. In this movie, you were in the cockpit. You were, you know, whether you were looking at their face like this, or you were looking at them from behind, you were in the cockpit. Not like in the first movie. There was a couple of scenes where they were in the cockpit, but then most of the shots were from another camera looking at the plane from far away. That's the safest shot they can get back then, which I totally understand. But in this one, it was right there, right in front of you, right? You know, like every fight, every dog fight, every training mission was right in front of you. And that's what made this movie so much better than the first one. I'm going to go out and say this movie was better than the first one. The writing was better than the first one. The first one gave us a foundation, gave us what the movie was about, gave us what Pete Mitchell is. And the second one gave us the conclusion of this movie. And I'm glad they did it. And I'm glad he did wait and didn't fall for it. He was like, hey, you know, Tom, we need to release this because we're losing money right now. And he just stuck his guns like, look, it needs to be seen in the theater. Because look what happened to Black Widow. We all watched Black Widow at home, and, you know, it bombed. You know, it's one of those movies that we were all anticipating because of COVID. We had to watch it at home, and nobody liked it. And poor Scarlett Johansson lost out on a lot of money because she didn't get her blockbuster, you know, whatever. But my key part of the movie, and what I loved about the movie, is towards the end, and, you know, Tom Cruise gets shot down to save Rooster, or Maverick gets shot down to save Rooster, and now he's trying to find his way in this foreign territory. He doesn't know where it is. A helicopter comes. Everybody remembers that scene. Helicopter comes, getting ready to shoot him, and then here comes Rooster out of nowhere, kills the helicopter, shoots the helicopter down, gets shot by a missile, and then now they're both stuck in foreign, and they're arguing with each other. I saved you. You saved me. No, I saved you. And then Maverick goes, what were you thinking up there? And then he goes, you told me not to think. And then Maverick has this look like, oh shit, you were actually listening to me. Yeah. No, I totally agree. You know, and it's funny. Normally, I don't care for movies where, like, if you're in a war situation or something like that, or a fighting situation, and everyone survives, I'm usually like, oh, great, yeah, you know, perfect ending, right? You know, it doesn't really work that way. And here we have, you know, Maverick not not wanting to lose someone again. You know, he lost Goose, and he wasn't going to lose his son. You know, there was no way. And so he thought he was, you know, doing the ultimate sacrifice by saving his life and putting his life on the line. And he ends up surviving. Like you said, Rooster now comes and saves him. And it's like, but now we get that great back and forth between both of them. And it kind of comes full circle again, because, you know, early on, like you said, when we see the flashback of when they're at the piano and he's on the piano, you know, you kind of feel like he was a part of Rooster's early life, you know, when his dad was still alive, and that was like his godfather and uncle. And so, you know, that love is there. And we see those just moments throughout the whole movie where, you know, Maverick is holding back and doesn't want to tell him why he did what he did and all that. So to see at the end that like all come full circle, and you know, it's like you said, man, the kid is listening to me, and you know, we see that Rooster does care about him, and in a sense has forgiven him. It's great. So I didn't mind in this situation everybody's surviving. You know, I really did think someone was going to die, but that's fine. I mean, it is what it is. You know, it was still a good movie.
If he died in the movie, I think it would have been, if we did a what if and he died in that scene, I think I would have been okay with that, because he proved his point. And he proved his point that he wasn't a selfish pilot. It wasn't all about him, that all he wanted to do was complete the mission. But what I loved about that whole scene is they had to end it the way the whole movie started, or the whole 86 started, right? They're finding a way back. And what plane do they find? They find an F-14. And just lo and behold, Rooster's going to be Maverick's wingman. And, you know, it's like, it comes back full circle where it's like, you know, and there's shots there where Rooster's like, how are we going to get this museum piece off the ground? Because it's like an old plane. So it's like, Maverick's like, don't worry about it. I'll do this. And then that one scene when they were up in the air, and it's like in the beginning, Tom Cruise was the teacher, teaching these kids, telling these kids what to do. But at the end, Tom Cruise ends up becoming the student because of that one when he said, you told me not to think. Tom Cruise had that look like, damn. And then in that scene where they're flying the F-14s, and then they're like, we can't outrun these guys. You know, these are Gen 5 planes. How are we going to outrun this? He goes, we don't have this, and this is an old plane. And then Rooster goes, it's not the plane, it's the pilot, because that's what Maverick's been saying throughout the whole movie. So then Maverick is like, damn it, you're getting me with my own words. This is exactly what I just told you. So I mean, just to end it with an F-14, man, to me was like, wow. Wow.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's those little details, those little Easter eggs that tie both the movies together without them beating the old movie into your head. And side note, if you didn't watch the first one, or you know, you don't remember it, you don't necessarily need to watch it. They give you enough backstory without it being super drawn out and you feeling like you're watching flashbacks the whole time. So they give you enough where, okay, just enough of what you need to know to follow the story now. And you know, if you're just not interested in watching the original, you don't have to. I suggest you do. But that's how good this movie is. It's a great standalone movie on top of being a great sequel. And this is going up there with, you know, Godfather to me as far as a sequel that's better than the original. You know.
Wow. I mean, that's a definitely good podcast we could do. Did we ever do that podcast? Sequel that's better than the original?
I think we did. If we didn't do a whole episode on it, we definitely touched on that topic.
Yeah. And then piggybacking off Joe, I think I counted 5 instances that ties back to the original. Like you said, you don't have to watch the original. You don't have to, because this is a standalone movie on its own. But there is 5. I want to say 5. There's Rooster, because you guys want to know who Rooster is. There's Penny Benjamin. I counted 5. I got to remember what the 5 was. Iceman was 3, yeah. And there was a couple other ones that did tie into the original that has just like little talking scenes or little scenes that you know, doesn't really tie in with this movie. But yeah, you can watch this movie without even, you know, like my kids is like, I didn't even watch the first one. I'm like, you don't have to watch the first one. This is a new one. I kind of wish they watched it so they both lazy asses would have been like, you know what, Dad, I think I want to be a fighter pilot.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, Bob. I think you guys are gonna be Bob.
Now, now, let me ask you: are you, with this movie being done so well? And I mean, you know how I feel about remakes and sequels and stuff. Are you ready for another big, you know, blockbuster from the '80s, part 2 or sequel? Because I hear, and I don't know how true this is, that there may be another ET in the works. So I'm just curious as to your feelings on that.
Well, you know, okay, I'll go back just a little bit. I'll answer your question in a second, but you know, Avatar's coming out, all right? Avatar, whatever water. I'm not sold on that movie whatsoever. That movie was 100% CGI. E.T. was practical effects back when it was made. A person in a suit walking around pretending they were an extraterrestrial. The movie was written well back then. You know, it was a little corny, but it was like one of those corny movies that only kids would like. As an adult, you're watching it, you're like, you know, you need to probably pop some smokes in your brain for you to enjoy the movie. Yeah. But for them, did they say if they're going to do a sequel, or is it going to be a remake?
That's what I don't know.
Okay.
And I have to look up, but I believe it's going to be a sequel. So I'm a little kind of like, meh, you know, I mean, especially with the classics, I don't really care for them.
Is Elliot coming back? Is he an adult? Is it going to be his kids? That, you know, I mean, there's all those questions that we're going to ask, right? At least in Top Gun, you know, Tom Cruise is still alive. Tom Cruise was able to, you know, reprise his role as Pete Mitchell and do his role as Maverick, and everything was good about it. They just added a little more this and this just for, you know, flavor. In E.T., if they did a movie like E.T., you know, all those were child actors back then. And we don't even, besides Drew Barrymore, we don't even know what the rest of the guys are doing right now.
I know Elliot, I mean, he's still around. I don't know if he's still acting, but he did do, I remember a few years back, a commercial where they did a teaser as if it was, you know, a new ET movie or something like that.
That was a Super Bowl commercial. That was a Super Bowl.
You're right. So I know he's still alive. But as far as, you know, if he'd be in it or if Drew Barrymore would be in it, I'm clueless.
I mean, 1982. That was 1982 that this movie was out.
Wow, I was 2.
And for them, I mean, you know, I don't know. I mean, I want to see. Okay, the kid in me wants to see a sequel. The kid in me wants to see a sequel, but the adult in me don't want them to fuck up the original. You know, it's kind of like, how many movies have they given us where they're like, oh, dude, that didn't need a sequel.
Yeah,
you didn't need to touch that. You didn't need to. You know, like we'll go back to like Goonies. Goonies doesn't need a sequel.
Nope.
It doesn't need a remake. It doesn't need a Goonies. It's fine the way it is.
Aladdin didn't need sequels.
The only
Lion King didn't need a sequel.
The movie that I love that they did a sequel that they need to stop is Jumanji, because, you know, the first sequel was good enough, but they didn't need to do 3 or 4 or whatever else is out there right now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The second one was another pleasant surprise.
Yeah,
it was funny. It was thought out. It was written well. Everyone did well. The third one, I don't know if there's a fourth one. Is there a fourth one? But the third one, I was like, why? That's you know.
I mean, I'm looking at the cast right now and looking at who they are. Besides Elliot and Drew Barrymore's character, I don't remember it. You know, C. Thomas Howell was one of the kids in the movie. I don't remember anybody else in here. Was the brother Keys? I don't even remember.
Yeah, like I said, I was 2. Actually, it might be something I need to watch again.
I mean, if they're going to do it, I honestly think they should just remake it. Only because if I don't remember these characters, and this movie was only 4 years younger than Top Gun, then I don't know.
Yeah, same here. I think if you're going to do a remake, and I just don't know that I even want to see a remake.
Yeah,
I think I'd rather just leave it like a time capsule how it is.
It could be surprising, like you know, the whole Top Gun thing, and it's funny because you were that generation where you were young when this movie came out. You were like, I'm not going to watch this movie. There's no way, you know, But my generation guys were like, curious. We wanted to see what this movie was going to bring us. We wanted to see. Everybody thought Tom Cruise was going to die in this movie. Spoiler alert! Too late if you guys are listening now. But everybody thought he was going to die in this movie. And like we just said earlier, if he did, I wouldn't have minded. It's like there was a scene in the trailers where someone did die. Like someone died in the trailer. We don't know who it was, but then come to find out it was Iceman. But it was one of those movies where it was surprisingly better. I mean, right now it's at like 14 million in the box office, and they said they haven't even released this movie in China yet. And
this is post-COVID when no one's really going to movie theaters anymore. Yeah.
So just think about once this movie is released in China, because China's the big mainstream movie watchers, and once this releases in China, then we're probably going to get a lot more people watching. A lot more people. I just want to see what the numbers is when it comes to that. But yeah, I can't wait, man. I mean, this is a movie that once it's out, once it's released, I can't wait to watch it. I can't wait to watch it.
Had I watched this earlier, I'm positive I would have seen this a second time in the movie theater. Yeah, it's that good.
Yeah,
and I generally don't do that. There aren't very many movies I would see again, but in the same breath, I would probably see everything everywhere all at once again too. It's that good of a movie.
I'm gonna watch that, and I'm hoping we can sneak it in next week. But listen to this: top 10 highest grossing movies at domestic box office as we speak right now. Okay, number 1, Star Wars: Force Awakens. I don't know why. Avengers: Endgame. Spider-Man: No Way Home, Avatar, first Avatar, Black Panther, 700 million, Avengers: Infinity War, 678 million. We'll go all the way down to 9. Top Gun Maverick, 635 million as of July 25th.
Wow.
These movies that I just mentioned are old. It's going to surpass Titanic. It's like Titanic is at number 7, Jurassic World is at number 8. It's gonna top Titanic by the time this is over.
I wouldn't be surprised if they re-release it, because I feel like a lot of people don't know how good this movie is.
Yeah,
I think word is now getting out that Top Gun is fucking shit.
Yeah, And it's funny because this site that I'm on, it broke down that this is Tom Cruise's highest rated grossing movie. Top Gun Maverick, $1.2 billion for Tom Cruise. Mission Impossible is after that, and the last one is another Mission Impossible. You got The Last Samurai, War of the Worlds. This is his highest grossing film.
Wow, look at that. I mean, how we can't you got to give the guy props. I mean, 40 years into his career, he does the highest grossing movie of his career. Not only that, it's an action movie that he's doing stunts in, and he's 60 years old. I mean, mid 50s when he filmed it. I mean, if that's not inspiring to anybody out there, that like there should be no timeline on your success and what you need to do when this guy's fucking doing amazing action movies, at 60 years old, at a time when no one's even doing action movies anymore. It's all CGI. It's all, fake stuff. Like, I mean, that's freaking awesome, man. I really, really hope the Academy gives this movie the props it deserves.
Let me ask you this before we end the show. Did you feel any of the Star Wars vibe in this movie?
Yeah, and we didn't really touch on that. It's funny that you say that. I did not realize the maneuvers and the tricks and things you can do in jets.
Yeah.
And some of the stunts are freaking mind blowing. They're sick. And there's some of these dogfight scenes when they're freaking being missiles shot at them and they're shooting flares back at the missile to blow it up. And it's just, it definitely does give you Star Wars vibes, only it's like real life.
Yeah. To me, was the whole Death Star scene in the original Star Wars, where the trenches, and then they had to get that little missile into that little hole to blow up the whole Death Star.
Into the air vent, which is the same.
This was an air vent, exactly.
An exposed air vent.
It needed 2 shots, and they needed one to open it up and one to me, this whole thing was like, I love the fact that the director said that wasn't intentional. That was just, they needed to stay below the radars, so they needed to make it, seem like they weren't there. But everyone took it as, that's exactly what they did in Star Wars. It's like,
I didn't even think of that, but yeah, that's.
But I like it. I like how, if you can take a movie like Star Wars and say, hey, this is I can't even speak. This is what it would look like if it was, not Star Wars. If it was a real life dogfight, right. This is what it would look like. And I was like, didn't even think about that.
Yeah. And all it does is prove that, Star Wars is real.
Star Wars is real. It's
possible. It's going to happen.
It's just in the galaxy far, far away.
Yeah. It's inevitable.
This is fun, man. I like it when we watch a movie and we both agree on something. I mean, my coworker was like, dude, you guys reviewed how many movies and you guys agreed or disagreed on the last couple movies you've done. When are you guys going to watch a movie that you're not going to be like, I was like, well, you know what? It just so happens we like the same thing. We don't like the same thing. Joe was surprised I didn't like Thor because I'm a big MCU fan, but it's like, I have to give my honest opinion.
I mean, I didn't really care for it either. But
Joe says go watch Everything All at Once, or is it
Everything Everywhere All at Once? Yeah.
Joe says go watch it. I watched Easter Sunday the other day, and I wasn't too thrilled about it. Me being a Filipino character or a Filipino guy living this Filipino life, I think it was just Killjoy. I think it was Killjoy, and I'll give my review on that on my podcast just because, I had high hopes for it, and I was hoping this would elevate the Filipino community, but I think it kind of brought us down.
Really?
We'll check out
your pod, and I'm interested in seeing it because I will see it. I'm not going to watch it in the movie theater. My wife and mother-in-law are probably going to go see it. I'll wait for it to be on the streaming service. So, and I don't mind spoiler alert. So I'll definitely check out your podcast to get your thoughts.
Like since we've been doing this podcast and we've been doing reviews on movies, I go in there with two things. I go in there as a fan watching the movie, enjoying the movie, but I also go there nitpicking, like, oh, this could have been done better. It's like Siskel and Ebert kind of thing, right? I have that attitude. I still enjoy the movie. I still like the movie. But there was just a lot in the movie that was just like, God, really?
Yeah. And I mean, and especially with podcasting, now we probably watch movies a little differently because you're kind of looking at certain things. You're paying more attention. It reminds me of when I took film class in high school. I never watched movies the same again because I was looking at everything, not just following the story. And it's the same deal. You're watching it knowing that I'm going to take all this information in and try to explain it to someone later. And so you're kind of go through it with like this fine tooth comb. And so, it's a little harder. And especially when it's something that you got your hopes up for, to be let down kind of sucks.
Yeah. All right, guys, this has been fun. Thank you guys for listening again. Catch us on YouTube, The Ordinary Joe's Podcast on YouTube, The Ordinary Joe's Podcast on Instagram. I did leave out something for you guys to ask us questions, but I don't think anybody came out and said, let's talk about this movie. We did have somebody reach out to us about Thor Love and Thunder. Shout out to Iz for responding to our Thor Love and Thunder post. Sorry, we didn't like it. Iz said he did. Iz is from the R&I podcast. Shout out to the R&I podcast. Iz said he did like it, but
Sorry.
Is when it comes out on Disney Plus, I'll try again to see if I like it. There was a lot of things that we did leave out. Is reminded us that we left out the Jean-Claude Van Damme thing, and we did. Right. Was it worth to mention? Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Honestly, I actually forgot about it. So you just mentioned it.
Yeah,
that's funny.
And for you guys who are wondering, yes, this is my real hair. It's not fake. I don't have any of the Rogaine. You can pull it, you can tug it, you can do whatever you want. Trying to grow my hair out, trying to be that.
Yeah, and this is my real hair too.
Yeah.
So.
Trying to be that.
All I got.
I wanna make my own movie, and I'm gonna call myself Thor. I'm the Love and Thunder Thor. See, I could have done a better Filipino accent in the movie than those guys.
I probably would get annoyed after a half hour of that.
Oh my God. It's not, again, you'll hear it. But thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. I got to play this in the background while we leave because this is just the jam right here. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. Until next time, we are the Ordinary Joes.
Peace.
See ya.
The Ordinary Joes Podcast.